Hi friends, this is E, the empty nester. Today I'm going to be harvesting the dwarf gray sugar peas and the cranberry beans that I planted around March 2nd. They're both about a 60-day crop. You plant them directly in the ground, and in about 30 days they start flowering and producing the pods for the beans. And the peas, sometimes peas are harder to germinate. They can take 7 to 10 days, sometimes 2 weeks. And they've just got a harder shell. And I've read to break the dormancy, you can, like scratch them on some sandpaper or something, or soak them 24 hours, and that helps them. And the ones that don't germinate may come back next year and germinate. But I started out with 25 of the dwarf gray sugar and less than a handful, of the cranberry beans. And these I'm going to have to go ahead and replant. They, some of them were growing in the shell. If I would have picked them when they were this stage and they're just kind of waxy and pulled them out. You can see in here too, that little bitty white spot right here. This bean is already starting to grow too. From all of our rain here in Missouri, it was a bad year of lack of sun and too much water. But I technically could, save these seeds and cook them, or I could, there's a good chance with all the moisture in them that they may not be fertile for next year, because some of them have already started to grow. When I was sitting here hulling them all I could think about was, back in the 1980s, I was in Ohio and my dad was harvesting his pinto beans and shelling them and picking them out, and all I could think about back then was, why is he going through all this work when they're only like 49-50 cents a bag back then? But today, I can appreciate that he did it because he loved to grow his own food, and he wasn't dependent on the grocery store. He was born on, my mom's side of the family was born on top of the mountain in West Virginia, and he was born down below at the bottom. He had more flat ground than we did. Not that there's much flat ground at all in West Virginia, but he had more flat ground to farm on, and he was taught by his father and mother, and the same went for my mom. My mom's got a green thumb, but she didn't really pass on much knowledge other than you dig a hole and put it in and it grows, but my dad took me to the side of his house and showed me that he had a mountain of compost. It was almost the size of 2 tandem truckloads, sitting there growing on the side of his house. And he said that's the secret to my garden, was compost. And it turns out he was right. If I would have only, wanted to know more and learned more when I was younger, I wouldn't be a know-it-all today, but I would know more than I know today. A lot of things that I'm relearning, are things that are pretty important, and I don't know what else to say other than, in the past I went through life blind, didn't observe anything, and today, I look in the shell when I harvest it and I see that the beans are connected like an umbilical cord to the thread on the side, and that's pretty much knowledge I didn't know before, because I just would shell them and, think nothing of it. And now when I pull a plant out of the ground, I look for the mycelium, I look for, I look at the root structure and, you know, look at the ground and see, are the worms missing? Are the worms there? You know, there's just so much to, what do you call it, take in, you know, if you decide to, you know, analyze the situation that you're looking at when you're growing things. Okay, here's one, let me show you. See on the side here how it's starting to grow? And that's kind of the umbilical cord too that it was attached to. But it's also from too much water, and this would easily put in the ground and start growing today. And that's what I'm going to have to do with it to keep it alive, is start growing it today. But let me get on with, you know, showing you the harvest. Cranberry beans, and I thought I'd start out showing you, look at my sunflowers. I can't even touch the top. It's like amazing, you know, probably 10 foot or more, you know, in height. But we'll go ahead and get to for a couple months, and I like to let them dry on the plant, and you can either, you know, take the whole plant out and let it continue to, you know, dry on the plant, you know, hang them upside down, or pull them off and bust the shells open. And what's amazing is they started out with a dark color bean, and these are a light color bean. I wonder if they just need more time. But for the most part, you know, I just pull them off, and I can take these and resow them and make even more plants, or, you know, put them up for seed for next year, or use them all winter, or, you know, use them to cook like pinto beans. But, you know, I've seen things where they want you to wait till the shells get leathery, but I kind of prefer them fully dry. That way I know the bean is fully mature. That one created a strange looking bean. That one may or may not be viable. Too much water got to it, I think. But now I can come by and, you know, trim the area up. Let me give you a close-up look. See how colorful the bean is, and then this one is kind of damp. This one's still soft, and if you look inside, this one's not fully mature. It's nice and pliable. You can eat these beans as green, you know, like a green bean at an earlier stage, but I prefer the hard, you know, dry bean. That's amazing. But I just put the shells back on the ground. Everything I take out, I put back, you know, in compost form, and then leaving the roots in the ground leaves the nitrogen in the ground. But I think that's all I'll show you on this one for now. It's about 60 days from planting the seed to harvest, so they're a pretty quick bean. I'll take you over to see the mung beans. They're starting to flower right here. It's a really pretty little yellowish green colored flower. And I've never found a complete video or information on growing the mung beans, you know, from a plant up to know exactly, you know, how long and everything. So I'm recording the process here. I need to pull the weeds out, so you have to excuse, you know, the weeds surrounding my beans. But with all the rain we've had, you know, it kept me from doing everything I need. If you look closely, there's a ladybug on that one. Let's See if you're getting... Okay, if you look really closely at that flower, there's a companion ladybug with it. I love that we've got both, you know, the ladybugs and other, you know, things to protect our garden. Next I'm gonna go and do the dwarf gray sugar peas. I've let them sit here and dry up on the vine. Okay, let me open it and look at that. They look good as new. This one only has a couple. I've got quite an abundance. I'll be able to plant quite a few, you know, next year. I could have, you know, taken these off and eaten them like the green pea pods at an earlier stage, but this year is mostly all growing for seed. So this whole plant, you know, will be my seed harvest to grow future and then to send back seed to the EFN. Oops, dropped one. Quite a good harvest, I think. Let me get these harvested and I'll get back with you. Over here on the black coat runner beans, the scarlet, they're producing finally pods, and there for a while with all the rain, the bees weren't able to get them pollinated. Now I've got lots of them and they're humongous. If you look at this compared to my finger, you know, it's at least as long and as wide as my finger, and has a chance of getting even bigger. These guys were the last, the bruschetta. There was no information on them, and they've taken the longest to produce a vine. I had no clue that they were a vining plant. And then if you look up here, there's a flower and a long green pod coming out. So it's starting to form its first plant. Or its first bean, I'm sorry. Let me see if I can give you a close-up. I think it's pretty cool.